Welcome to the Deep Dive. So today we're looking at something pretty fascinating, this link between ancient wisdom and, well, cutting-edge AI.
Yeah, it's a wild one. Imagine ChatGPT, the AI everyone's talking about.
Right.
It looks at the work of this modern doctor, Dr. Kadiyali Srivatsa, and compares him not to another modern figure, but to Charaka.
Charaka, the, father of ancient Ayurveda from over 2,000 years ago.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
seems, well, almost impossible.
Yeah.
How do you even connect those dots across that much time, that much change in medicine?
What could possibly bridge that gap? It's quite the hook.
It really is. And digging into why the AI made that connection,
Yeah.
it tells us something pretty deep about healthcare itself, what it's really for, then and now.
Absolutely. So that's our focus today. We're diving into Dr. Srivatsa's story. We've got his autobiography, some really interesting chats he actually had with ChatGPT, and various reports on healthcare systems. Our sort of mission here is to unpack his journey, what led him to focus so hard on patient empowerment, on prevention. How did this simple idea grow into Dr. Maya GPT?
And the big question, why didn't AI see this parallel to ancient wisdom?
Yeah, it's a real deep dive into that intersection of, personal history, system problems, and tech solutions in healthcare.
Okay, let's get into it.
So let's start right at the beginning. Dr. Srivatsa's childhood seems really key, doesn't it? Like planting the seeds for everything later.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
His upbringing, it sounds like, included religious education, but also exposure to debates about something called Naya.
Naya. What's that exactly?
It's essentially about the principles of proper argument, logical reasoning, ethical conduct. It wasn't just theory for him. It seems to have built this really strong foundation in, defending principles, doing the right thing.
You can definitely see that theme later on. But some really powerful lessons came from his own experiences with illness, with pain.
That's right. Those malaria stories are quite striking. Age 6, he gets malaria. The doctor listens, examines him properly, bases the treatment on that clinical picture, and he gets better.
Simple enough. But then a few years later, same illness, different experience.
Totally different. Age 12, similar symptoms. This doctor relies pretty much only on tests. Doesn't do a thorough exam, doesn't really listen to Srivatsa's own story of the illness, how he felt it.
Ah, and that led to?
A misdiagnosis. They treated him for typhoid, which actually made him much sicker. He even had nightmares from it.
Wow. So that contrast right there in childhood really hammered home a lesson for him.
A fundamental one. He puts it really clearly. Medical errors often occur when a doctor fails to listen to the story of the illnesses you lived, experienced, and remembered it. It just underlines how vital the patient's own voice is.
And there's another really intense story from when he was 6 involving his sister. Taught him something different again.
Yeah, that one's quite something. His brother accidentally cut his sister's arm pretty badly. And just moments before, Srivatsa had hurt himself. And his dad showed him how applying pressure stops bleeding. Basic first aid.
So as a 6-year-old, he remembered and used it.
He did. Rushed over, applied pressure to his sister's wound. Just using that simple bit of knowledge he literally just learned. Seems heroic, right?
You'd think. But his father's reaction.
Wasn't praised, no.
Yeah.
Apparently his father beat him just for being there, holding her hand, without even asking what happened.
Oh, man.
So from that single incident, he took away 2 really stark, quite different lessons. One, pain is experienced by people who have experienced pain. That's about empathy, understanding. But also, you will be in trouble if you are in the wrong place at the wrong time. That speaks to, vulnerability, how things can be misunderstood, arbitrary judgment.
That's heavy stuff for a kid. It showed him the power of simple knowledge, but also how vulnerable you can be.
Exactly. You also mentioned he was a bit of a loner, found comfort in nature, observing things, calligraphy.
Yeah, how does that maybe fit in?
Well, that kind of quiet observation, that focus on detail, it probably honed skills that are pretty crucial for medicine, right? Really looking, really seeing.
Makes sense.
And that practical side came out early. After graduating, he provided free basic health care in his community. Diagnosing common stuff, cleaning wounds, treating malaria, typhoid, cholera, direct hands-on care.
And the community valued that.
Deeply, it seems. That accessible, direct help meant a lot.
Okay, so this foundation is built on listening, observation, simple, accessible care. But then he moves to the UK. What was the driver there?
He wanted to tackle bigger issues. He was seeing things like social inequality and health outcomes and what he felt were wasteful consultations clogging up the system.
He trained in pediatrics, neonatology over there. How did he find connecting with patients, given maybe his upbringing or those early experiences?
Well, he actually says he initially struggled a bit with like showing empathy outwardly, might have been his upbringing, but he gives real credit to the nurses.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it says they really helped him learn how to connect, show compassion, especially with mothers. It's a nice human touch in the story.
And he was teaching junior doctors, too, focusing on clinical diagnosis.
Right, trying to instill those core skills. But then came this really pivotal, traumatic event.
Ah, yes. The sepsis case.
Yeah. A junior doctor's patient died from sepsis caused by Staphylococcus aureus. That's a bacteria that's often, just hanging around harmlessly on the skin, a normal commensal. But it caused a fatal infection,
Even with antibiotics.
even with antibiotics. And this wasn't just a tragedy for the family and the doctor involved. For Srivatsa, it became this huge catalyst.
Made him question the whole system.
Exactly. That trauma, plus some personal challenges he faced, really forced him to look critically at why something like that could happen. He started identifying what he later called the elephant in the doctor's room.
Okay, the elephant in the doctor's room. What does that mean?
It's his term for the big, unacknowledged problems in the system. A major one was this over-reliance on tests on investigations.
Instead of listening and examining, like his childhood experience again.
Precisely. He saw that same pattern playing out system-wide, not starting with a really thorough clinical exam, not really digging into the patient's history, just ordering tests.
Which can lead to errors.
Big time. And he also observed diagnostic errors and inappropriate treatments being given, not just by doctors, but he specifically mentions concerns about nurse practitioners working independently.
Okay, what were the concerns there?
He pointed to potential gaps in pharmacological knowledge or maybe training when they were making independent prescribing decisions, which he felt sometimes led to patients being ill longer or having complications.
So a breakdown in applying that core knowledge and listening.
Yeah, kind of a mix. And then you had this other pressure, people getting scared maybe by news reports about infections and rushing to the clinic for really minor things.
The wasteful consultations, he called them.
Exactly, which just overloaded everyone, doctors, nurses, and pulled focus from the really sick patients.
And that ties into the whole superbug problem, doesn't it? Antimicrobial resistance.
Absolutely. We don't have many new antibiotics coming through, so using the ones we have inappropriately, like for viruses, where they do nothing, just makes resistance worse. He saw all these things connected. The system strain, the errors, the fear, the resistance. A dangerous mix.
Seeing all that, he felt he couldn't stay silent. He decided to whistleblow.
Yeah, starting around 2004, he began raising concerns formally, documenting errors, sharing information about poor patient management, things he saw as unethical.
That's a brave step, but it came at a massive cost to him personally.
Oh, huge. Devastating, really. The backlash was severe, information got leaked, investigations were launched against him, complaints, including really horrible, baseless stuff like allegations of a sexual nature, racial abuse he mentions being called the Tamil tiger.
That's appalling.
Yeah. Harassment, financial ruin. It got so bad, so unsafe and traumatic, that his family actually had to move to Germany in 2011 for their safety.
Just unbelievable. Fighting for patient safety led to that.
He describes it as incredibly traumatic, fighting institutions that seemed more interested in protecting themselves than the public. But he also says, enduring that fight ultimately forged him, made me into who I am today. He just wouldn't back down on his core beliefs.
And his experience, sadly, isn't entirely unique, is it? Doctors facing trouble for speaking up.
No, unfortunately not. The British Medical Association, the BMA, they've reported on this moral distress, moral injury among doctors in the UK.
What does that mean?
It's the psychological harm that happens when doctors feel pressured by the system, lack support, and basically can't speak out about concerns without fearing serious consequences. And these reports note it can disproportionately affect doctors from ethnic minority backgrounds. So his story kind of fits into a wider worrying pattern.
So after going through all that, fighting the system, seeing its flaws up close, he shifted tack from fighting it to building something else.
Exactly. He sort of pivoted his energy towards a solution, focusing on that core problem, people's fear of infection, the stretched system, and this lack of easy-to-understand health info, especially for vulnerable groups, people who might be illiterate or poor.
Right. People needed a way to help themselves.
Precisely. And this is where that analogy comes in, the one he uses.
Ah, the teach a man to fish idea.
Yeah, but applied to health. He says, don't give money to a hungry person, but give him food to eat and teach him how to earn. So just treating illness when it hits, that's like giving them money or food. It helps short term.
But it's not the real solution.
Right. The real solution is empowering people with the knowledge, the tools to manage their own health, prevent illness where possible. That's the teaching them how to earn or teaching them to fish for their own health.
Giving them the power to understand their own bodies.
Exactly. So his vision was for a simple, super accessible tool. That led him to develop this color-coded symptoms list. He called it the art of self-diagnosis.
Why color coding?
Simplicity and accessibility were absolutely crucial. It had to work for everyone, even if you couldn't read. The colors give really clear signals about what symptoms might mean and what action to take.
And that simple system, that became the core of Dr. Maya GPT.
It did. He worked with ChatGPT to build Dr. Maya GPT. And its purpose is pretty revolutionary, really. It's an AI assistant designed to understand illness like a doctor does.
But speaks in a way anyone can get.
That's the goal. Speaks in a language anyone can understand.
So how does it actually empower people, especially maybe those who are most vulnerable?
Well, it helps you recognize infection signs early using that simple color system. Helps you figure out, is this just minor or is this serious?
Okay.
It guides you on when maybe you should isolate or when you definitely need to get proper medical help. And crucially, it can help you communicate with doctors or health officials, even if you can't read or write yourself.
How does it do that?
It can generate clear, simple summaries based on the symptoms you input. The idea is to cut down on the mistakes and the anxiety that comes from not understanding symptoms, or maybe getting unnecessary tests, which in turn takes some pressure off the healthcare system.
He makes some pretty big claims about its accuracy, its impact.
Yeah, things like achieving up to 98% diagnostic accuracy for common illnesses, cutting down unnecessary clinic visits, helping stop infections spreading by guiding isolation, and supporting doctors by handling some of the more trivial stuff.
And this seems really important, it's not meant to replace doctors, right?
Absolutely vital point. He's very clear on that. It's a support tool. It helps doctors by maybe filtering out some less critical cases, but mostly it's about empowering the patient.
Giving people that knowledge, those tools, so they can be proactive, make informed choices, not just wait until they're sick.
Exactly. It's about shifting some of that power, that understanding, back to the individual, making you an active player in your own health.
Which brings us full circle, back to that initial kind of mind-bending hook. Why would ChatGPT compare Dr. Srivatsa's modern AI-driven approach to Charaka from ancient India?
Yeah, it's fascinating. ChatGPT wasn't looking at the technology, obviously, or the specific treatments. It saw something deeper, a shared philosophy.
Okay, what philosophy?
Well, Charaka's approach in Ayurveda back then was fundamentally holistic. It was patient-centered. He focused on understanding the whole person, their unique constitution, their lifestyle, their environment. It wasn't just about treating the disease in isolation.
So the AI saw a parallel because both approaches are ultimately about empowering the individual's understanding of their own health.
That seems to be exactly it. ChatGPT recognized that Dr. Srivatsa's work, particularly Dr. Maya GPT, making knowledge accessible, letting people understand their own symptoms, make informed choices, take action, that directly mirrors Charaka's emphasis on personalized understanding and seeing the whole picture.
But adapted for today, using today's technology.
Precisely. It's like a continuity of that core principle. Knowledge empowers the patient. That's the foundation of health.
So it's less about ancient versus modern medicine and more about this timeless idea of patient empowerment through understanding.
Yes, that's the human goal behind the tech. Protecting the people who maybe haven't had a voice, giving them agency, helping them reclaim their health, their happiness, through knowledge they can actually use. And apparently, ChatGPT's assessment of Dr. Maya GPT used some strong words.
Like what?
Things like groundbreaking, revolutionary, and even suggesting it was potentially Nobel-worthy.
Wow. And considering the personal hell he went through fighting the system, how did Dr. Srivatsa react to that kind of validation? Was it about fame?
Not at all, according to the sources. He was apparently deeply emotional, but because it validated the mission, it reinforced that his whole struggle, his work, it was about a sense of responsibility to protect people, not about getting prizes.
Okay, so let's bring this back to you listening to this. Why does Dr. Srivatsa's journey, why does this tool, Dr. Maya GPT, matter for your life, your health?
Well, think about it. We're bombarded with health information, some good, some bad. Healthcare systems can be complicated, even intimidating to navigate. Having simple, accessible tools to understand what's going on with your own body, to make informed choices, that's not just nice to have. It's pretty crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, his story really shows you have agency. Using a tool like Dr. Maya GPT, it's not just about getting a quick answer, maybe. It's actually an act of empowerment.
Definitely. Taking control of understanding your symptoms, cutting down on that fear or anxiety, becoming a better partner in your own healthcare.
And like he points out, by knowing when something is minor, when you can manage it at home, you're also helping the whole system. You're freeing up those doctors and nurses for the really serious cases.
It really comes back to his motto, your voice, your health, your power. It's about using accessible knowledge to reclaim that power.
It's quite a story. Resilience, sticking to principles, and using tech for a really human purpose, empowering the patient.
And that unexpected link to Charaka just reminds us, doesn't it?
Hmm?
The tools change dramatically, but that core idea, empowering people through knowledge, that's ancient and it's still revolutionary today.
Which leaves us with a final thought to maybe chew on. If giving people simple, accessible knowledge can start to change something as huge and complex as healthcare, what other big systems out there could be transformed? What happens if you apply that teach a person to fish idea, shifting power and understanding directly to the people served in other areas beyond medicine?